Hey guys, as promised, this is the article I was talking about. It's not the original article, but it's from bloodydisgusting.com. It's just basically um, a summary of the article that I read about the restoration of Legend of Boggy Creek. It says, Bigfoot horror film The Legend of Boggy Creek being restored in 4K for planned Blu-ray release. At the time of writing this article, Charles B. Pierce's 1972 film, The Legend of Boggy Creek, is not yet available on Blu-ray, but that will soon change thanks to a restoration that the George Eastman Museum is currently working on. Observer reporter brings the news to our attention today, teasing a 4K restoration that will arrive in theaters and on Blu-ray. The site notes Pamela Pierce Barcelow, the director's daughter, has partnered with the George Eastman Museum to restore The Legend of Boggy Creek in 4K resolution for an eventual Blu-ray and theatrical release. This will be the first time the film has been seen in its proper Techniscope format since the original theatrical release. They add, the restoration is being performed using the original negative from Technicolor and original prints. The elements will also be stored and cared for by the museum. More details as we learn them. Now this is the original Observer Reporter article. Drive-In Time Machine, classic horror film Legend of Boggy Creek to be restored by George Eastman Museum by Justin Chanel. Who would have thought a blog about a drive-in movie nostalgia would end up reporting news? In this week's Drive-In Time Machine blog, I covered the 1972 horror movie The Legend of Boggy Creek, a G-rated faux documentary based on the Falk Monster Legend of Arkansas that was a surprise hit. In the blog, I lamented about the film's murky copyright status that resulted in countless unauthorized DVD releases that looked worse than VHS tapes. I ended the section of the blog stating, if there was ever a film that is deserving of a proper high-definition restoration, it's definitely The Legend of Boggy Creek. My timing couldn't have been better. The day after the blog ran, I was contacted by Pamela Pierce Barcelow, the daughter of Boggy Creek director Charles B. Pierce, and she has now gained copyright to the film. Speaking to the Texarkana Gazette, Barcelow said that the rights to the film, as well as Pierce's 1974 film Bootleggers, were assigned to her by the son of the original financier, L.W. Ledwell. Barcelow has partnered with the George Eastman Museum to restore The Legend of Boggy Creek in 4K resolution for an eventual Blu-ray and theatrical release. This will be the first time the film has been seen in its proper Techniscope format since the original theatrical release. According to the Texarkana Gazette report, the restoration is being performed using the original negative from Technicolor and original prints. The elements will also be stored and cared for by the museum. Barcelow claimed seeing the film on the big screen for the first time in 45 years made her cry, and I'm sure a whole legion of Boggy Creek fans will too when they finally get to see this film the way it was meant to be seen. Now, I'm just wondering if there's a link to that actual blog, to the blog that he... I don't see a link to the original blog. I would love to read the... I would love to read that, let's see, sometimes drive-in movies played in indoor theaters. Let's see, maybe this is the article in question. In fact, I think it is. And I'm going to include the link to this blog or this article as well. I'm going to include links to all these articles for you guys. Because hey, I like to give a little bit of extra content. It's all about the extra content. Sometimes drive-in movies played at indoors theaters. And you can see several The movie advertisements in newspapers. Old movie called Monkey Shines, Mary Poppins, Legend of Boggy Creek, Tarnished Angels, things like that. 60 years ago in 1958, when southwestern Pennsylvania's drive-ins were in their prime and there was a smorgasbord of cinematic treasures on the area's outdoor screens. But at the then recently opened second screen Mount Lebanon Drive-In, the management was trying something new by booking mature adult film entertainment and emphasizing that during the engagement of this film, children will be discouraged. No, I'm not talking about the nudie movies the drive-in is infamous for booking, but a classy subtitled 1954 French thriller called The Snow Was Black. Based on the novel by Georges Simenon, the advertisement that ran in the Observer Reporter back on Saturday, July 26, 1958, quotes the New York Times review as claiming only a French filmmaker would be likely to attempt it. And that French director was actually Argentinian-born Louis Seslavsky, who helmed 29 films in a career that spanned 4 decades and predominantly worked in France during the 1950s. While it seems The Snow Was Black was well received by critics upon its U.S. release, with Newsweek even calling it a masterpiece, it seems to be one of those films that has been lost to time. I can't find a single home video release. The film was followed up with the crime caper comedy The Lady Killers, starring Alec Guinness. But Sunset Drive-In in Washington was offering 3 movies with a little something for everyone in the family for the low price of 50 cents, including Walt Disney's Bambi, the Arthur Heller-directed drama The Careless Years, and the Samuel Fuller western Run of the Arrow. Tri-State Drive-In in Burgettstown debuted Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, debuted on Sunday, July 27, 1958, with the rock and roll musical The Big Beat. However, their ad mistakenly called the film The Vertigo and listed Vertigo star Kim Novak as appearing in The Big Beat. And in Greene County, 3 big action hits were hitting the screen at Skyview Drive-In. The Vikings, starring Kirk Douglas, Tony Curtis, Ernest Borgnine, and Janet Leigh, opened the night, followed by the western flick Outlaw's Son and A Midnight Spook Show closing the night. I can't find any movie titled Midnight Spook Show, so I have to assume that they were throwing on whatever horror movie they could get their hands on that weekend. But moving forward 5 years to 1963 shows a real horror movie marketing master at work in the newspaper ad department. Sadly, he wasn't appearing at the drive-in, but we can't take a look back at film history and ignore that a William Castle movie was opening in Washington 55 years ago this weekend. Castle was the king of selling schlock movies with a carnivalesque atmosphere. His most famous movies had elaborate marketing gimmicks, including installing buzzers in the seats for the Tingler and floating skeletons over the audience during House on Haunted Hill. His film 13 Frightened Girls, which played the Basel Theater on a double bill with The Young and the Brave on Sunday, July 28, 1963, had a different kind of hook, however. Castle publicized a worldwide search for the 13 most beautiful women from 13 different countries. He even went so far as to make different edits for each country that highlighted their specific beauty. However, in true carnival huckster form, not all of the girls were from the countries they represented. But that wasn't the only gimmick. According to some reports, Castle also supplied theaters with lickable lottery tickets to some showings. I'm not exactly sure how that worked, but that certainly sounds like something Castle would have done. 10 years later, in 1973, it seems another quintessential drive-in movie again got booked at the Basel, though this time under its name Midtown Theater. Charles B. Pearson's The Legend of Boggy Creek opened there in July 1973 and stayed on the screen for several weeks. Oddly, it was Disney's Mary Poppins playing the drive-in this past weekend in 1973. Any drive-in movie buff could tell you that those bookings definitely should have been reversed, because The Legend of Boggy Creek is a movie that would play best at the drive-in. Boggy Creek tells the story of the legend of the Fouke Monster, an Arkansas creature that is similar to Bigfoot. Residents in Arkansas, as far back as 1953, had reported seeing a 7-foot creature covered in hair, and sightings have been reported as recently as 2010. And just a little personal note, if you read Lyle Blackburn's excellent book, The Beast of Boggy Creek, you'll note that sightings go back even further than that. They go back to about the turn of the century, or maybe a little bit after. And sightings have been reported as recently as at least 2 years ago. Pierce took the stories of the Fouke Monster and presented them as fact in The Legend of Boggy Creek, which is a faux documentary style with actual residents of Fouke, Arkansas, portraying themselves in testimonials recounting their stories of run-ins with the legendary beast. The documentary format of the film even inspired the 90s horror hit The Blair Witch Project, which took the idea even further by pretending the footage in the film was 100% real. Shot for the paltry sum of $100,000 by Pierce, this independent movie was a surprise indie hit and brought in about $25 million at the box office while scaring the pants off of children and adults alike with its groundbreaking style. The film even lived on as one of the titles selected by preeminent drive-in movie critic Joe Bob Briggs during his recent The Last Drive-In Marathon on the streaming service Shudder. Sadly, the rights to The Legend of Boggy Creek seem to have either expired or are tied up in some kind of legal red tape that has resulted in a string of terrible bootleg and unauthorized DVD releases sourced from old VHS masters that crop down Pierce's Technoscope cinematography to a murky, full-frame mess. If there was ever a film that is deserving of a proper high-definition restoration, it's definitely The Legend of Boggy Creek. And then there's stuff about other movies as well. But obviously, the principal film that is our subject here is The Legend of Boggy Creek. Now, this blog was written on July 31st, which was just this past week, as a matter of fact, this last Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, the previous blog that I read off, he talked about that he'd been contacted by Charles B. Pierce's daughter, who had just achieved the copyright status of her father's movie and was having it fully restored by the George Eastman Museum. So this is very exciting news, and this article kind of gives us a little time capsule into drive-in releases. Of course, drive-in releases would also be shown in indoor theaters as well, but still, very cool stuff. It's a very good article. Again, all these articles will be linked in the comments section below. And I'm looking forward, I really am looking forward to finally getting this on Blu-ray and getting it in its original screen aspect, which I imagine it will be in widescreen. I don't see how they wouldn't be able to do that if they have found original copies and if they have found original prints, which it seems like they have, then we're going to be in for a heck of a treat. As I mentioned in my May-HBM Cryptid-Corner episode for this week, they did an excellent job of restoring Sasquatch and the Legend of Bigfoot on Blu-ray. So I think that this will actually be very well done. I'm looking forward to this. And there's all kinds of extras they can put on the Blu-ray as well. So, but yeah, this is very exciting. This is very cool. And can't beat this with a stick. So anyway, that is a bit of the additional extra bonus content for this week. And yes, my video about the Roger Patterson book will probably be either uploaded today or tomorrow. So you guys be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, thanks for tuning in, and y'all be good or be good at it.